As per request, in my comments, someone mentioned they wanted me to make a video about ISFPs. At first, I was thinking, why would I need to make a video about ISFPs? There's a million other YouTubers that do the exact same thing and have covered over immensely. So I guess I can just give my personal opinion on ISFPs. ISFPs can go a lot of different routes when it comes to life experience and what they do. They are of the artisan SP temperament, and so they are pretty balanced people, in my opinion. However, their ego, and if they ever want to choose happiness in their life, they're going to have to choose a life that allows them to be free to express themselves in a way that it goes along with their morality of which they're going to base their whole life off of. And so if you think of an ISFP, you think of they're pragmatic. So this means they're interdependent, not in, they're independent, not interdependent. Um, and they're interest based. And so they're looking for a win-win in life. They're looking for what's in it for you, what's in it for me. Let's make this fair. This is why you see a lot of ISFPs get involved in political stuff. You see them as social justice warriors even, and you can see ISFPs as being the angry protesters because SE rage is a real thing. When SE is also combined with FI, it gets very ragey. Um, that being said, a lot of the times you don't know the ISFP is ragey because they are background types. So they are, or the interaction style in the background, the most introverted of the introverts. You have the four on the bottom, the ISFJ, ISFP, INTP, INFP. These are your background types. They prefer to be in the background. They prefer not to be necessarily in the leadership role for the most part. However, with ISFPs, as they get older, this may change due to the fact of what they aspire into, being in the ENTJ. And so let's just go over some basic things that ISFPs are really, really good at. ISFPs are really, really good at knowing exactly how they feel. They may not share this with you due to the fact that TE inferior might be afraid of what you may think of his feelings. Okay, because their fear is what other people think. Their fear is having a bad reputation in public. Their fear is being humiliated in public, things like that. And so FI Hero always knows exactly how they feel about certain subjects, whether this be a significant political football like gay marriage or abortion, things like that. FI Hero knows exactly where it stands on this and already has a conclusion, even if they do not share it with you. Because as high SE users, they are in the moment types. They're very concrete thinkers. They're not necessarily abstract. And so they're going to be dealing with what is. And so this is why this type can really vary. Coming from my own personal experience, I've lived in 8 states, 4 different countries. I've met a lot of different types of ISFPs. And because of TE inferior, they are greatly influenced by who they surround themselves with. So the saying, show me a man's friend and I'll tell you what kind of person he is, really, really applies to ISFPs. And so if an ISFP is kind of stuck in a rut and not having a hard time figuring out what they want to do, this is a real big problem. And as advice for them, I would suggest they need to change who their friends and family they surround themselves with, who they go to church with, or whatever. Because NI child should be very wanty. It should have a lot of different innocent plans for the future for himself. NI child is very innocent, naive, and just really curious a lot of things. And so ISFPs have many different interests in life. Um, that being said, the stereotype for ISFP is obviously the musician, and which there's no shortage of musician ISFPs. And I do recommend that every ISFP learn how to play some kind of instrument, not necessarily guitar like the stereotype is, but any kind of things where they can be creative. Because even in a life where you're working in a factory and you can't necessarily be too creative at work, you can always come home and be creative with music. And that's kind of why ISFPs trying to venture into that, because they want to have that freedom to express themselves, to create how they feel. And they definitely want other people to appreciate this, and they definitely want to have their lovers, their spouses, their family members show their appreciation towards them because they're worried that they're not appreciated by others because they have FE nemesis. So FE nemesis is their worry, and it worries that they're not valued. Okay, they worry about other people's feelings. How do other people feel about them? And so this can really cause this type to be very stagnant, because if you think of their fear as how other people think and their worry is how other people feel. And so you can see a lot of arrested development in these types, even to the point of seeing ISFPs like basement dwellers that just play video games all day long. This is unfortunate. This typically, though, is more prone to INFPs. In that sense, INFPs can have a hard time venturing out because they're not NI users like ISFPs. And so, but if an ISFP's NI child is stagnant and being impeded by his family, by his wife, by his husband, uh, whatever, they're going to get really broken down because that's literally child abuse. And and so to go along with more of their cognitive functions, SI critic is critical of their past. They're critical of long-term memory. And so it's very important that ISFPs write down thoughts and things like that, because they can be pretty spacey and forgetful. Um, that being said, any trickster is what kind of makes them charming and endearing to an ENTP, which would be their bronze pair with dating. Um, is any trickster kind of has an interest in abstract thoughts and abstract things and what the other intentions are, but they kind of reach for it and they miss. That's how the trickster function works. They think they have a grasp on it, but really in reality they have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to that. That's why, unfortunately, when it comes to ISFPs and ISTPs, they can get caught up in not necessarily rape allegations, but at least like not understanding a woman's intentions, thinking she's flirting with them when they're really not. And this can get into problems. And so you see a lot of ISFPs or ESFP ISTP athletes, football players in college, and oh, I thought it was consensual. I thought it was consensual. He probably did think it was consensual. And I mean, in today's era, she could be just screwing around with him, or she literally was not really flirting and he thought she was. I had a really close ISTP friend who never knew women were flirting with him. He was completely oblivious to it. Um, ISFPs aren't as bad as ISTPs in this regard, because they have FE nemesis, and so they're kind of worried about how other people feel and what they value. So they're more aware of this. So ISFPs can vary from a lot of different types. And when we're talking LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, ISFP, to Michael Jackson, Prince, ISFP, you have teachers, a lot of ISFP teachers. I have ISFP friends who are welders and also brewers, and that seems to be the new trendy thing to do for ISFP, is to become a beer crafter. And so whatever way they can take whatever exists already and create their own spin on it, that's what they got to do. So an ISFP needs to look what is concrete, what is already invented, what is already here and now, and what do I enjoy doing. So if I was to give advice for a young ISFP concerned about his career, I would say go to a trade school at first. Definitely take advantage of that SE parent function, which is really good at creating and very responsible in that sense. You could go into welding and come out as a welder in 2 years and be really, really good at it. Being a welder is a respected job, and so then you also get that respect that you would desire and that reputation of having a creative job in that sense. And then welding itself could go into other aspects of you being artistic with welding, or just generate enough money so you can venture into other interests. As the ISFP gets older and gets more experience and kind of gets over their inferior function of being afraid of what everyone else thinks and afraid of losing their good reputation they want to keep, uh, they aspire to be the ENTJ. And so you'll see ISFPs become entrepreneurs usually around their 40s. And so if they were a welder, or they were a roofer, or they were any kind of construction or any kind of like artistic creator in some sense, they typically go into business by themselves. I have an ISFP step nephew, I guess you would call him, who is really good entrepreneur, and he is HVAC. Um, and he's doing really well for himself, and I'm very proud of him, doing the fact that he was raised a Jehovah's Witness, and he's no longer one now, but because of this, to overcome all that, abuse of growing up is very impressive to me. Um, what more can I say about ISFPs? Yeah, so it's you can venture a lot of different ways in life. And even if you get stuck in a factory job, which ISFPs are really, really good at, because believe it or not, ISFPs, even though their ego is pragmatic interests, they're double systematic because they're ENTJ side and their ESFJ side. And so they can, if you ever worked in a factory, I worked a temp job at a factory once, and ISFPs kind of made their machines their own, and so you kind of had like an assembly line about it in their own kind of original way. They made even something as monotonous as factory work something an individualistic aspiration, and so they were, they had their, even the machines, they, just they personalize their section in the factory, and this is the way it should be. And so as an ISFP, even if you get stuck in a monotonous job such as a factory job, you can still find happiness at home as long as you're creating. Now, not just necessarily mean music. I know a lot of ISFPs that get into landscaping in their own home, but it's all about NI child finding that path road in life, what you want to do. And the world has a lot of different possibilities, and ISFPs are pretty balanced people, because they have access to systematic interest, pragmatism, and affiliative. And so they have different aspects of their mind that are not really set in a way like an NT or an NF would be. And so whether you want to be that ISFP hippie guy that's always talking about world peace and fighting for animals' rights, you can do that. Or you can be, a musician, you can reach the stars like Michael Jackson, for instance, or, LeBron James and things like that. And so this type varies a lot about what they can do. Um, just be aware of some of your trickster function. Uh, find a TI user you can trust, preferably an SFJ that has your best intentions in mind, even an ENTP for that matter, INTP for that matter too, who has your best intentions in mind, who's an FE user, who's a TI user, who can verify things for you, because ISFPs are very susceptible to group think, be the fact that TE inferior fears what other people think, and so they'll just go with the crowds. And so whether you can be a Trumpster in Nebraska or you can be a liberal ISFP in Berkeley, they're typically going to follow the crowds, and this can be a problem. And so this is why picking your friends selectively is very important for ISFPs, because otherwise you can be on Facebook all over the place sharing fake news nonstop, whether that be left political or right political spectrum. And I definitely see this a lot on Facebook, and due to the fact that the FI is so strong and SC is so strong, they can get very angry and ragey over the stupidest stuff that might not even be true. And this is unfortunate. But no, ISFPs are really good. If you want to talk relationship wise, sexuality wise, if they're gay, more than likely ISFPs are going to be top only. They're going to prefer to have somebody who they want to be their canvas and they want to paint upon them and to create the art in the bedroom in their own way, because they're control focused. So they're going to be all about outcome, making sure that you come to that a conclusion that they have in their mind, because they're creators in this sense. Being control types in this sense, there's outcome focused, and ISFPs are double control. Okay, and so they don't necessarily make decision as quickly and lightly as an ISTP would with their NI child, because um, of this double control factor. And so an ISFP will usually take their time making decisions. Some people might think they're stupid or slow due to the fact that they take so long to make decisions, but this is not the case. They're just taking their time to make sure they make the right decision, because they're really afraid of what this might mean to their reputation, what people might think about them, and how people might feel about them. And this could be an issue. So it's so as an ISFP, you can go a lot of different routes. As you aspire with your T inferior, I know an ISFP going to college right now who wants to be an engineer. Okay, so you can use this knowledge of physics, knowledge of the physical realm to your advantage. And that's why I recommended trade school, a lot of less investment monetarily with that. You're going to be naturally good at pretty much anything you pursue, whether you go from plumbing, HVAC to whatever, building cages at a zoo, as a zoologist. The sky's the limit with this type. Just focus on getting over that inferior. I recommend reading books written that are about entrepreneurship for most part, books that are about expressing yourself freely. And this would be very important to an ISFP. But that's about all my thoughts on the type, and I hope this helps the person that asked me to do this.